Well, there I was, like most old fat guys, just scrolling through Facebook, taking a little mental breather. Been here in the office for all day today, doing some work, getting ready for tonight's live stream over on Vulcan Soapbox, YouTube, come see me. It's they're having me as a guest again, which continues to make me question their standards of the guests that they'll have on. But they keep asking me to be on, so I am honored and obliged to be on. So I was just scrolling Facebook, getting me a little bit of easy, low-effort dopamine. I came across this little post here from an Ashley Nicole, and I have no idea who she is, no idea at all. But, it just popped up, the algorithm sent her to me. I guess the algorithm knew I was having much too nice of a day. So here she is playing off of the Charlie Kirk, Stephen Curtis Chapman. Yeah, that's how old I am, ain't it? No, that's a Christian bluegrass singer. That's the wrong guy. Wrong Stephen. I guess all them white folks look alike to you when you get my age. But Stephen Crowder, the thing that they would do on college campuses. So she's playing off of that. It Takes Two to Tango. It's just systematic gaslighting for abuse. Changed my mind. It amazes to me, this is a bit of a digression, but it's worth noting that systematic gaslighting itself is indicative of the wordplay that women love doing. Women and feminized men. It's the wordplay. You see, it's a setting of the argument by manipulation of words, and it gives different caveats for whomever uses it to hide behind as their assertion begins to be utterly decimated. Then they can say, well, I didn't mean it that way. I used this word over here, and that's really what I meant. That's sort of a disingenuity. I don't even know if that's a real word, but they're not being genuine. I may have just made that word up. But they're not being very genuine. They're disingenuous. I'm not sure that would be the same as disingenuity. I think ingenuity is coming up with solutions, isn't it? Anyway, It Takes Two to Tango is just a systematic gaslighting. Systematic says that as you go and you point to ways society does not do that, they're just like systematic racism. People who claim that exists, then the woman can then say, oh, well, I don't mean individually. I don't mean my next door neighbor, my father, my brother-in-law, my uncle, the man who owns the grocery store down the street. I don't mean my boss, my manager, my employee. No, none of these guys, none of these men. I'm talking about systematically, this nameless, faceless situation, entity in society that I can't point to anyone in particular, so I can make this vague, ambiguous, nebulous, very squishy, malleable claim that something exists and never, ever, 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 ever have to actually provide evidence that it exists. But just my claim is enough because it's systematic. Whatever the system is, it's in there somewhere. It's systematic. And gaslighting is not even like it's not even actually recognized by people who study the mind and the emotions and the psyche. Gaslighting is a pop-psyche, trendy word that's derived from a damn movie, which of course portrayed the man to be some sort of manipulative, controlling monster who had wired his house up. This is how old this movie was. I don't know, early 20th century. Who had wired his house up, and back then, rich people, their house had gas lights in it, kind of like we see in street lights in some metro areas nowadays. And he plumbed them up and everything so that he could make them flicker for no reason, and it spooked his wife out, caused her anxiety. And then when she would come to him with it, he'd say, well, I didn't notice anything. And of course, he was trying to just drive her crazy. And of course, all of this is scripted. And it's amazing to me how women and feminized men, feminine thinking people in general, can see a movie present a certain concept of reality that has been scripted out. This movie, the sign of great literature, whether it's storytelling or music or whatever, is when the storyteller can get the reader or the viewer to suspend disbelief. You see, if you cannot get that person to suspend their disbelief, well, then your story sucks. You see, 'cause that's no different than reading a repair manual for a dishwasher. But if you could tell a story in such a way that can get that person to suspend their disbelief, then their brain will draw into that story and those characters will become like real people and such. And then they become a part of that story. That's why when in a horror movie, the monster or whatever jumps out, the person sitting perfectly safe in their living room will also jump. It's because they've suspended their disbelief, and there's a part of their mind, a part of their consciousness that's in the story. That's the sign of great writing and great art and great production. Problem is, the feminine mind, they'll suspend their disbelief and never unsuspend it. So they'll watch movies like Gaslight. They'll watch movies or whatever. They'll watch these rom-coms. And that's another one, the rom-coms. You know what? I love a good chick flick. My wife, Deidre, she's the one who wants the outer space sci-fi and the action movies and stuff like that. You know, if you're in my generation or before, you'll understand what a slee stack was in the old television show. What was it? I forget. Anyway, where they went over the waterfall and they ended up in the dinosaur and they had the monsters going around the slee stacks that would kind of squeal at them, and you know, it's just terrible special effects and suits. But the slee stacks, I call Deidre's movies that slee stack shit. Oh, you're watching a slee stack shit again. It'll be some sci-fi thing. The Land Before Time, was that it? No. Anyway, and so because women just typically, that feminine mind, even if it exists in a male, they'll suspend their disbelief in somewhere it gets messed up in their head that they think that the things they saw in the movie are factual and true and accurate and it's part of real life. And it's not, you know. So this idea of systematic gaslighting is they have taken this idea from the movie Gaslight, and they've somehow or another decided that it's an actual psychologically studied and verified dynamic. I don't know. And you can't tell them no different. Can't tell them no different. You know? And then what eventually happens is the women who believe this, many of them will go into that field because it goes along with their maternal instincts of being a nurturer and a caregiver. So they'll go into these fields of therapists and counselors and psychiatrists and this sort of stuff, and they'll carry those presumptions with them. And then you'll end up with some of them that will just swear up and down that this is an actual thing when it really isn't. It's been imported from the pop culture, pop psyche world. So that points to you right there what we're dealing with here in the woman who posted it. It takes two to tango. It's just systematic gaslighting for abuse. Changed my mind. And I know many of you that are watching me are probably as old as I am, so you're probably having to zoom in on your phones to try to read that right there. So let me help you out right here. We'll make it much bigger. I'll move over a little bit. Telling an abuse survivor is starting off with the finger wagging. Telling an abuse survivor, telling an abuse survivor, it takes two to tango, is like her analogy here, or a simile rather, you know, which is an analogy, but it's a simile too. It's just absurd on its face, but I'm going to read it anyway. But just so you know, I can feel the cringe just running through me as I read it. It's like watching a shark eat a swimmer and asking the swimmer what they could have done to be more collaborative. It takes two to tango is just systematic gaslighting for abuse. It takes two to tango does not mean that you're asking, say, the victim of abuse, you know, what could you have done to collaborate more with your abuser? You see, You see how that goalpost just moved? I don't know if that goalpost moved because Miss Ashley Nicole intended to move the goalpost or whether it moved because she's just stupid. But one or the other has to be true. At least I think it is, and that's my story. It takes two to tango means it takes two to, with abuse, it takes two to be involved in the incident of abuse. It takes two to tango. It takes two to dance. Tango's a dance, by the way, if you didn't know that, Miss Ashley Nicole. And it does take two to tango. You can't get out there in the middle of that dance floor, one person, and tango. I mean, it's basic 1 + 1 = 2. So right there, she's saying that telling someone that they have a responsibility in any of their abuse is systematic gaslighting for abuse. But then in her little analogy here, she says it's like watching a swimmer get eaten by a shark and asking the swimmer what they could have done to have worked with the shark more. You see how that doesn't add up? We've spent far too long. Here she goes. She's preaching now. Hallelujah, sister. We've spent far too long making a predator's calculated composure, some alliteration right there, calculated composure for innocence and a victim's reactive trauma for instability. All because institutions find it cheaper to call a psychological ambush, have no idea what the hell a psychological ambush is. This is word salad with some blue cheese dressing on it because it's a lot of cheese going on here. We've spent far too long making a predator's calculated composure for innocence and a victim's reactive trauma for instability. In a world obsessed with the middle ground fallacy, we need to remember that if the feminine mind loves speaking about we and us too, and not the individuals, that they don't like speaking in the you or the I. I need this, I think this, you need this, you think that, you did this, I did that. They don't speak in specificity. No, it's the we. Well, we believe and we feel and we think and we want and we know. You see, that sort of stuff. That if one person is seeking repair and the other person seeking a hostage, begging the question right there, meeting halfway isn't a compromise. It's just a more convenient location for your surrender. She made no point there whatsoever. I'm dying for someone to help explain to me what her point is right here, other than avoiding accountability. And the call for accountability to be right there, it takes two to tango. It does, in fact, take two to tango. And I have engaged with many, many, many women who claim that their husband or boyfriend or whatever was the fault for the fail in the relationship because of abuse, and then never really give detailed information about what the abuse was. It's just the claim of the abuse that ends up setting them as the one who did everything she possibly could to have the marriage stay together, to have the marriage be healthy, but the other guy, the man, is the bad guy because he was abusive. And I do believe there are men out there who are abusive, so I'm not saying there aren't, but I'm saying that it's been my experience when I have conversations with these women, and I've had conversations with a lot of them just because I love arguing, when I try to get them to give me some actual details, something that's verifiable, police reports, hospital reports, eyewitnesses who saw this man berating the woman, insulting her, and these sorts of things completely unprovoked. No, crickets. Or more excuses for why. Well, if I called the police, they wouldn't do anything, and I couldn't afford to go to the hospital, or I didn't want to get him in trouble, or whatever. But it's very difficult. It's not impossible. Why is it not impossible? Because there are men out there who are abusive. But there are also women out there who are abusive. But when that happens, we hear things like, wonder what he did to deserve that. I bet you he won't try that again. Bet he learned his lesson. If mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. Happy life, happy wife. That kind of stuff. We make jokes out of it. But when it comes to the woman, They make excuses. The women make excuses for why they didn't call the police, for why they didn't leave the man, for why they didn't go to the hospital to get treatment so she could have medical records, these sorts of things. And that is essentially what we're looking at here. It takes two to tango. It's like watching a shark eat a swimmer and asking the swimmer what they could have done to be more collaborative. I'm going to respond to that as if she didn't say collaborative, because that moving of the goalpost makes zero sense. I'm going to respond to it as if and asking the swimmer what they could have done to have avoided the abuse or stopped the abuse or whatever the case may be. That's what I'm going to respond to. And I'm going to tell you this. Unless someone feeds me to the sharks, there is zero, nada, nunca, no chance, absolutely no chance that I will ever get eaten by a shark unless I get fed to the shark. I mean, there's an extremely low chance that any individual will get eaten by a shark or even attacked by a shark. I mean, it's so rare, basically. It's sort of like getting struck by lightning. I mean, I haven't looked at the numbers, so don't go look up the numbers and then go in my comment section and say, well, no, it's not. It's a lot more common than, it's extremely rare that anyone gets attacked by a shark, much less actually killed and eaten by a shark. But for Dane, it's zero. Ain't gonna get eaten by no shark. You know why? Dane ain't going in a shark's house. Dane is not gonna go where the shark is unless it's laid up there on the ice, where it's done being caught and skinned and processed and is ready for me to take home to cook. Some people eat shark meat. I don't. Well, I have like carnivals and stuff, but at any rate, that's the only time I'm going to be where the shark is. So the chances are zero that I'm going to get eaten by a shark. So what could the swimmer have done to avoid it being abused like that? Don't hook up with somebody that's going to abuse you. Stay out of the ocean. Stay away from the sharks. And I hear these stories. I've heard them most of my adult life. How women talk about, well, he was just a Prince Charming until he had me latched in. And then he started treating me like this and doing these. I've heard those stories, but I've never eyewitness seen them. What I have seen many, many, many times are women who would get the butterflies for some dude, and then her friends and her family and her loved ones cannot drag her away. They can point out things that that man does, whatever it is. Maybe he's not an abuser. Maybe he's just lazy as a dog, and she gonna end up taking care of him while he spends all of her money. Let's say it's not something that's physical or violent or something like that. And the family can tell her that the dude, he's a dead-end street. He ain't never going to be nothing. He's just looking for some woman to pay his bills and so on and so forth. It won't matter. It will not matter until she finally leaves him or he leaves her. And then she'll tell the truth. Can't tell you how many times women I've known have done that. The sun rose and set on that man's butthole until it didn't. And when it didn't, then she'll go back anachronistically and tell all these stories about what a low-down good-for-nothing fella he was, which would be things that her friends and family and loved ones have been telling her for years. And then what did she do? Well, I was young and dumb. I just didn't see it. You didn't have to see it. Your friends and family and loved ones outright told you. Well, yeah, but I was in love. And she starts appealing to all of this Hallmark Channel rom-com stuff. Ladies, that man is responsible for how he treats you. He's responsible for what he does. But you're also responsible for the decisions that you make. You're responsible for it. I know you don't like that. I know you want to remain in that state of accountability along with a middle school child or maybe a high school child. Well, she's young, she's still learning, you know, kids will be kids. I mean, I know that's what you want, but you're responsible for your decisions. And when you choose to hook up with some loser man, some abusive man, some drug-addicted man, some womanizing man, some man who's too lazy to grow hair, You made that choice. And I say the same thing to men. Doesn't happen nearly as often, but I say the same thing to men who hook up with some gold digger, some gal who just wants to spend all of his money and won't be faithful to him. She's out there in the streets. Oh, he just got the butterflies. It doesn't happen very often. You know why? Masculinity is a vaccination against a lot of that. But a man who is a little feminized to one degree or another in his mind, and when I say feminized, I am not dogging out being a woman. I'm talking about where he's making decisions in his head based on his emotions. Like in the Garden of Eden, the woman saw the fruit and saw that it was beautiful and good to eat, so she ate of it. She sees this loser, and she believes that it's good to eat, and she believes he's beautiful, so she eats of it. Some men, a minority of men, will do the same thing. They'll see some gal and see that she's beautiful and good to eat, no pun intended. It's good to eat, and they'll eat of it. And then when she sucks him dry and takes all of his money and ruins his reputation, and he ends up on child support because she's done had, a kid or two or three. Some of them may not even look like him, that kind of stuff. I tell him the same thing, man, you picked her. You picked her. We tried to tell you, you picked her. You got mad at us. Stop talking to us because we were trying to tell you the truth about your whole ass woman over here. But you picked her. And so when I say this about women, you picked him. Don't come at me talking about I'm hating. You're a misogynist, dang. You just hate women. I feel sorry for your wife. I hope you don't have a daughter. Do you love your mama? I'm saying, look, I'm equal opportunity. I am equal rights and lefts. So I say this to men. I just don't get nearly as much of an opportunity to say it to men as I do to women. I mean, I know women who've gone from loser to loser to loser to loser. They hook up with the same man. He just has a different name and a different face, but it's the same personality. And the whole time, they're a victim. The whole time, they're not responsible. It's all his fault. And I will grant that he's responsible for his own behavior. But ladies, so are you. And if it's just simply impossible for y'all to be held responsible for the men you associate with and the decisions you make and the things that you do, well, then perhaps we need to set up some sort of a system where women stay with their fathers until they're married, and that father chooses the husband. Maybe it's a collaborative effort between the father and the brothers, maybe the uncles, prominent men in that family's sort of context. That future husband has to pass some sort of evaluation from the family, not just swoon the woman. Now, I know y'all ain't going to go for that because this is a feminist world we live in, but you keep ending up with these losers. I mean, you keep ending up, from your perspective, victimized by these losers, but you're not willing to put things in place to protect you from the losers. Why? I don't know. I guess you enjoy getting mistreated by losers. But if you don't need a guardian to look out for you until the right man is picked by people who can make better decisions than you can, that's cool. Go on out there and make your own adult decisions. But when you hook up with that loser, what you call an abuser, which abuse itself is a very squishy word. In some states, a man can tell his wife that they're not going to buy a new car because they're saving money to pay the mortgage off early, and she could go to divorce court, and she could call that financial abuse just because he wouldn't let her spend whatever money he wanted to spend. That's a true story. Don't believe me? Look it up. But at any rate, make your own decisions. I'm not trying to put women in cages or shackle them or put chastity belts on them or whatever. Hey, if y'all want to go out there and live your adult life, that's fine. But you're an adult. And just like men, you're responsible for your adult decisions. And when a woman is looking for an excuse, any excuse will do. I'm dang.